right, so for today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the Felo Multi Cutters. Now, this is a pair of wire cutters and a pair of wire strippers. They are somewhat similar to the Knipx Strix wire strippers, whereas they have the cutter and they also have the wire stripper on them. But these guys are a little bit different than the Strix from Knipx, and we're going to go ahead and go over those in the video. Now, these are the Felo brand of this plier. Now, from my understanding, Felo just has NWS produce the pliers for them, and they typically just rebrand them. Now, these are slightly different than the NWS, as these ones have a little bit darker yellow and red style of handles on them, and they also don't have the Felo logo there. Typically on the NWS pliers, you would see the NWS name that is a part of the handle, but they didn't do that on the Felo version of the tool. Now, if you aren't familiar with the Felo and NWS pliers, they typically, all of the comfort grip and all of the insulated ones comes with these little locking nubs here on the bottom of the plier, and what that is for is they have two different accessories that will clip onto these pliers. You can get a non-contact voltage tester, and you can get a tether device that will lock onto these. So if you're working with this tool at height, you can have it tethered off, or maybe you're working around some live wires and you just want to check to make sure that the wire that you are working on is not live. They have an attachment for that. Now, in the next coming weeks, I should have a video out on those attachments. I am currently just waiting on FedEx to deliver both of those. They should be here in the next couple of days, and then I should be able to get a video out on them. So, like all NWS pliers, these guys are made in Germany, so you're going to have that there on the outside of the handle, and then you're also going to have it on the stamped in the forging of the plier. Now, on this tool, I believe this is going to be the batch number that these were produced, and then below that, I believe that is the year that this plier was produced, and that's pretty typical or standard on a lot of insulated tools. They're always going to have the year that the tool was produced, just so you can gauge how old the tool is, and if not, it is time to replace that tool. Now, coming up to the cutting knives, you have a fairly large pair of cutting knives here on this plier, and then you have one of two wire strippers. So if you have a cable that has multiple conductors on the inside and you are wanting to remove that outer insulation to expose those inner cables, you can use this wire stripper here on the outside of the tool. And then you have your wire stripper here on the inside of the tool, so you can focus more on those individual conductors. And then we'll go ahead and flip the tool over. Pretty plain here on the backside, nothing really going on. You can see the backside of the cutters and the strippers there on the backside. So that's pretty much it for the detail on this guy. So we're going to go ahead and zoom the camera out here and get to some testing on these pliers. So we're going to go ahead and bring in some 10 gauge stranded wire here and see how well we can strip off this outer insulation with these pliers. So you just pretty much insert or you put the tool down as far back as the insulation you want to strip off, and then you put a little pressure on it. Now, I typically go around 3 to 4 times, depending on the wire. Sometimes you may need to go a little bit more than that. Maybe sometimes, depending on how much pressure you put on it, you may need to go around less, or you may need to go around more. Now, typically, every time I go around, I like to put a little bit more and more pressure to cut that outer insulation. So go ahead and go like that, and we should be able to pull off that outer insulation, and we'll go ahead and chop that 10 gauge stranded wire off, and we'll do that one more time. So like I said, every time I go around, I like to put more and more pressure on there, and you are able to pull off that outer insulation. So that's pretty much how it works if you're going to be stripping one conductor at a time. So we're going to go ahead and bring in some multi-conductors, which we have some NYM cable here. So this is a NYM 3-conductor cable. It's a little bit small to use for these strippers, but they are able to do that. So you want to strip off that outer insulation. So pretty much all you do is you pick the desired length, put a little pressure on it, and then rotate it. And then you can see you have a fairly decent strip. And then I just like to bend it off and pull off that outer insulation and all that stuff there on the inside. And if you did it correctly, you shouldn't have some score marks. Now, I do have some score marks, so I think I went a little too hard on there. But I don't see any wire sticking through. And then you can split the conductors apart, and again, you should be able to pull off the insulation. For some reason, I'm struggling with it a little bit here on camera. Like I said, these are definitely a little bit different than the Strix from Knipex, but they do work pretty much in the same fashion. So we'll go ahead and pull off that insulation. So that was with the 3-wire NYM cable. So we'll set that off to the side and get all this garbage here out of the way. And we'll bring in our 5-conductor cable and do the same thing with that. So you just pick the amount you want to have stripped off of there, put a little pressure on it, and then you rotate it one time. Pretty much is all I find you need to do is just go around, go back and around, and it should score that insulation all the way. And then you break off that outer insulation, and you should be able to pull that off and pull off this stuff here on the inside. And if done correctly, you shouldn't have any score marks there on your wires, and then you can proceed to strip the insulation off of them and hook up whatever you need to. So that's pretty much all that I have to show you on these multi-cutters from Felo / NWS. Like I said on some previous videos, the only real difference between Felo and NWS is going to be the finish and the handles on the plier. Other than that, they're pretty much the same. From what I've seen, the majority of the Felo pliers, if not all of the Felo pliers that they rebrand from NWS, all have this matte black oxide finish to them. Whereas the NWS pliers all have that that matte chrome finish to them, with the exception of that pair of combination pliers that I imported from Australia. Those had that matte black oxide finish to that. So if you're looking to pick these up and maybe you don't want a chrome plated finish, you can take a look at the Felos, but the finish on the plier doesn't really matter to you. You can pick up the NWS and/or. They're relatively about the same in price. I believe you're going to pay a little bit more for the Felo version rather than the NWS version. And that's just because, rebranding, and they got to be able to make a profit and things like that. So other than that, they're both, I would say there's a pretty decent pair of wire strippers or multi-cutters from both brands. So with that being said, that's kind of all I have for this video. So if you have any questions, comments, concerns, please feel free to leave them in the comment section below. And as always, thanks for watching.